My name is Lila Carter, and if you've ever been fired for something that felt so absurd it bordered on comical, then maybe you'll understand how I ended up here, sitting across from the man who once wielded my career like a pawn in his corporate chess game. Except now I'm the queen, moving freely across the board with purpose, precision, and just a touch of vengeance simmering beneath the surface. Let me rewind the story to where it all began because, trust me, no one could have predicted how things would turn out, not even me. I was an associate at Halcyon & Company, one of those sleek glass towers downtown where everyone wore tailored suits and carried themselves like they were walking billboards for success. The kind of place where ambition wasn't just encouraged, it was practically mandatory. And I thrived there, or at least I thought I did. I worked under Marcus Hale, the firm's managing partner. He had a reputation for being ruthless but brilliant, someone who could charm clients into signing contracts while simultaneously crushing anyone who dared cross him professionally. To say he intimidated people would be an understatement, but to me, he was simply the boss, demanding, yes, but also fair, at least until the day he called me into his office and told me I was fired. The words still echo in my head whenever I think about it. "Excessive billing," he said, leaning back in his leather chair as though delivering bad news was nothing more than another task on his to-do list. Excessive billing. That's what he went with. It sounded ridiculous even then, but when I tried to argue, pointing out that every hour I billed was meticulously documented and justified, he cut me off with a smirk. "Lila," he said, folding his hands together like some kind of self-satisfied villain, "you're talented, don't get me wrong. But we can't afford to have employees questioning our methods or making waves. This isn't personal, it's business." "Not personal?" "Oh, Marcus, it got personal the moment you handed me that termination letter." Fast forward 2 months, and life had taken a sharp turn. After leaving Halcyon, I struggled to find steady work. My resume boasted years of experience, glowing references from colleagues, not Marcus, and a solid track record of success, yet doors kept slamming shut in my face. Rumors spread quickly in our industry, and apparently, being labeled as difficult by someone like Marcus Hale was enough to make potential employers wary. But then came the call, the one that changed everything. A lawyer representing a bankruptcy trustee reached out, asking if I'd consider consulting on a case involving, guess who? Halcyon & Company. Apparently, the company was teetering on the brink of financial ruin thanks to a series of questionable decisions made by none other than Marcus himself. They needed someone familiar with their practices, someone who could sift through mountains of invoices and uncover inconsistencies without batting an eye. Someone like me. At first, I hesitated, wasn't diving back into the world of Halcyon, just inviting more trouble. But curiosity, and let's be honest, a healthy dose of schadenfreude, got the better of me. By the time I walked into the courthouse for my initial meeting with the trustees' team, I felt a strange mix of nerves and excitement bubbling inside me. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was an opportunity to prove myself, to them, to Marcus, and most importantly, to myself. The courtroom drama began almost immediately. Documents piled high on conference tables, spreadsheets filled with numbers that seemed to tell conflicting stories, and emails exchanged between Marcus and various executives revealing cracks in their polished facade. As I dug deeper, patterns emerged, patterns that painted a picture far darker than anything I'd imagined during my time at Halcyon. Marcus hadn't just been reckless, he'd been reckless with intent. Overbilling clients, inflating expenses, funneling funds into offshore accounts. It was all there, hidden behind layers of obfuscation designed to keep prying eyes away. And here I was, peeling back those layers piece by piece, exposing the truth bit by incriminating bit. What struck me most, though, wasn't the extent of Marcus's deception. It was how easily he'd dismiss me as expendable. He'd accuse me of excessive billing, knowing full well that the real culprit sat comfortably in his corner office, orchestrating schemes far grander than anything I'd ever dreamed of doing. The irony wasn't lost on me, and neither was the satisfaction of watching his empire crumble before my very eyes. Still, revenge wasn't the only thing driving me forward. There was something else. A spark ignited the day I stepped foot back into the legal arena. For the first time in months, I felt alive, challenged and valued. Every discovery brought clarity, every breakthrough fueled my determination. It wasn't just about taking down Marcus anymore. It was about reclaiming my identity, proving to myself that I was capable of more than I'd ever given myself credit for. Amidst the chaos of depositions, hearings, and late-night strategy sessions, something unexpected happened. Enter Daniel Reyes, the lead attorney on the case. With his sharp jawline, warm brown eyes, and a voice that somehow managed to soothe even the tensest moments, Daniel stood out in ways I hadn't anticipated. At first, I assumed he was just another suit, another cog in the machine tasked with dismantling Halcyon. But the more we worked together, the harder it became to ignore the connection forming between us. Daniel had a way of listening, not just hearing words, but truly understanding the emotions behind them. When I vented about Marcus's hypocrisy, he didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully, sharing stories of his own battles against injustice. His empathy was disarming, and soon, I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't since before my firing. Our partnership extended beyond the confines of the courtroom. Late nights turned into shared dinners at greasy diners, impromptu coffee runs morphed into long conversations about everything and nothing. We talked about our dreams, our fears, the paths that led us to this point. With each passing day, the lines between professional and personal blurred, until I realized I wasn't just fighting for justice anymore. I was fighting alongside someone who genuinely cared. Of course, falling for your co-counsel in the middle of a high-stakes lawsuit isn't exactly textbook behavior. But love rarely follows rules, does it? Especially when it sneaks up on you in the quiet moments, when Daniel's hand brushes mine as we review documents, or when his laughter cuts through the tension after a grueling deposition. In those fleeting seconds, I forgot about Marcus, about Halcyon, about everything except the warmth spreading through my chest. As the trial progressed, so too did our relationship. Daniel became both my anchor and my compass, grounding me when doubt crept in and guiding me toward solutions when the road ahead seemed impossibly tangled. Together, we uncovered evidence damning enough to ensure Halcyon's downfall, but instead of feeling triumphant, I felt conflicted. Revenge had driven me this far, but now that victory was within reach, I couldn't shake the nagging question: what comes next? Marcus's arrogance had always masked a fragility I hadn't fully appreciated until now. Watching him squirm under cross-examination, seeing the cracks widen in his carefully constructed persona, made me realize something unsettling. Beneath the bravado and manipulation lay a man desperate to hold on to power, terrified of losing control. Did I feel sorry for him? No. But I understood him in a way I never had before, and that understanding complicated everything. Meanwhile, Daniel remained steadfast, reminding me why we started this journey in the first place. "This isn't just about you versus Marcus," he said one evening as we sat side by side in a dimly lit conference room. "It's about holding people accountable, about ensuring fairness prevails. Don't lose sight of that." He was right, of course. This case wasn't personal, it was justice. Yet as I prepared for the final stages of the trial, I couldn't help but wonder whether justice alone would be enough to heal the wounds Marcus had inflicted, not just on me, but on countless others caught in his web. And so, as the courtroom lights flickered overhead and the echoes of closing arguments lingered in the air, I braced myself for what lay ahead. The end of one chapter inevitably meant the beginning of another, and though I didn't know exactly where this path would lead, one thing was certain: whatever came next, I wouldn't face it alone. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation on the day of the verdict. Lawyers shuffled papers, reporters scribbled notes, and Marcus sat stiffly at the defendant's table, his usual confidence replaced by a brittle tension that radiated off him in waves. I sat beside Daniel, my heart pounding as the judge entered and called for silence. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, the judge began, her voice steady and authoritative. "This court finds Halcyon and Company, along with its managing partner, Marcus Hale, guilty of fraudulent financial practices, including but not limited to embezzlement, overbilling clients, and misappropriation of funds." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Marcus's face went pale, his jaw tightening as he stared straight ahead, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The judge continued, detailing the penalties: hefty fines, restitution to affected parties, and, perhaps most devastating for Marcus, a permanent ban from practicing law or holding any executive position in a corporate entity. As the gavel struck, sealing the fate of Halcyon and Company, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief washed over me first, followed by vindication. This was the moment I'd been working toward, the culmination of months of relentless effort. But instead of euphoria, there was only a quiet sense of closure. Justice had been served, yet it didn't feel as triumphant as I'd imagined. Later that evening, Daniel and I found ourselves walking along the waterfront, the city skyline glowing behind us. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of salt water and freedom. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe without the weight of anger pressing down on me. "You did it," Daniel said softly, breaking the comfortable silence between us. His tone wasn't congratulatory, so much as reflective, as if he understood the complexity of what I was feeling. "I didn't do it alone," I replied, glancing up at him. "You were there every step of the way." He smiled, his hand brushing against mine before intertwining our fingers. "And I'll keep being here, no matter where life takes you next." His words lingered in my mind long after we stopped walking and leaned against the railing overlooking the water. The moon hung low in the sky, casting shimmering reflections across the waves. It was beautiful, serene, and completely different from the storm I'd weathered to get here. "Do you think Marcus will ever learn?" I asked after a while, voicing the question that had been nagging at me since the trial ended. Daniel shrugged thoughtfully. "Some people never change, Lila. But maybe this will force him to confront the consequences of his actions. Whether he learns from them is up to him." I nodded, accepting that some things were beyond my control. Marcus's downfall wasn't just about punishing wrongdoing, it was about setting an example, showing others that accountability matters. And while part of me wished I could see him humbled, stripped of the arrogance that defined him, I realized I didn't need that validation anymore. What mattered was moving forward, with integrity, purpose, and someone who truly believed in me. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. The media frenzy surrounding the trial eventually died down, and Halcyon and company dissolved into obscurity. Former colleagues reached out, some apologizing for not standing up for me sooner, others simply expressing relief that the truth had finally come to light. I even received job offers from rival firms, though none sparked the same passion I'd rediscovered during the case. Instead, I decided to forge a new path. With Daniel's encouragement, I started my own consulting firm, specializing in forensic accounting and corporate ethics. It wasn't glamorous work, but it gave me the chance to help businesses operate with transparency and integrity, something I'd learned the hard way was sorely lacking in the corporate world. Daniel and I grew closer with each passing day, our partnership evolving naturally from professional collaboration to something deeper. We weren't perfect, no couple ever is, but we complemented each other in ways I hadn't thought possible. He challenged me when I needed it, supported me when I faltered, and reminded me to find joy in the little things. One evening, as we sat together on the balcony of his apartment, watching the sunset paint the horizon in hues of orange and pink, Daniel turned to me with a look I couldn't quite place. Before I could ask what was on his mind, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Lila," he said, his voice soft but steady, "you've taught me more about strength, resilience, and love than anyone else ever has. You inspire me every single day, and I can't imagine my future without you in it." Tears welled in my eyes as he opened the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. All the pain, all the struggles I'd endured, they seemed so distant now, overshadowed by the overwhelming love I felt in that instant. Finally, I managed to nod, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes." Our wedding took place 6 months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon surrounded by friends, family, and colleagues who had become like family. As I stood at the altar, looking into Daniel's eyes, I realized how far I'd come from the woman who once felt defeated and discarded. That version of me would have never imagined finding happiness again, let alone building a life filled with purpose and love. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. My journey, from betrayal to redemption, from heartbreak to hope, had shaped me into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient. And as Daniel slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me for the first time as my husband, I knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them, with him by my side. Years later, as I sat in my office surrounded by awards and accolades earned through years of hard work, I often thought back to that fateful day when Marcus fired me. If someone had told me then that losing my job would lead to uncovering corruption, rebuilding my career, and falling in love, I wouldn't have believed them. Life rarely follows a predictable script, but sometimes those unexpected twists are exactly what we need to find our true path. And so, as I closed the file on another successful case and prepared to head home to Daniel, I smiled to myself. Revenge may have sparked the fire, but it was love, growth, and perseverance that kept it burning brightly. Life, as it turned out, had a way of rewarding those who persevered, not with grand gestures or dramatic fanfare, but with quiet, meaningful moments that made every struggle worth it. For Lila Carterez, those moments became the foundation of a life she once thought was beyond her reach. After their wedding, Daniel and Lila settled into a cozy home nestled in a tree-lined neighborhood just outside the city. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect. Warm wooden floors, shelves lined with books they'd collected over the years, and a backyard garden where Lila grew herbs and flowers. On weekends, they often hosted dinner parties for friends and family, filling the house with laughter and the aroma of homemade meals. Their life together was simple, yet profoundly fulfilling. Lila's consulting firm flourished, earning a reputation as one of the most trusted names in corporate ethics. She worked tirelessly to ensure businesses operated transparently, helping them avoid the pitfalls that had doomed Halcyon and Company. Her clients admired not only her expertise, but also her empathy and integrity. Word spread quickly, and soon she was traveling across the country to speak at conferences and seminars, sharing her story and advocating for systemic change within the industry. Daniel continued his work as an attorney, though he shifted his focus to pro bono cases involving consumer protection and fraud prevention. Together, they formed a formidable team, using their skills to fight for justice on multiple fronts. People began referring to them as the power couple of accountability, a title they both laughed about but secretly cherished. One spring afternoon, as Lila sat at her desk reviewing reports from her latest project, Daniel walked in carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He set one down beside her and leaned against the doorway, watching her with a soft smile. "You've been working nonstop all week," he said. "Don't you think it's time for a break?" She glanced up, momentarily distracted from her task. "A break? Are you kidding? This case is huge. It could set a precedent for how companies handle whistleblower complaints. And it'll still be there tomorrow," he countered gently. "Besides, I have something planned." Her eyebrows shot up. "Something planned? You know I don't like surprises." "Trust me," he said, his grin widening. "You'll like this one." Reluctantly, Lila saved her work and followed him outside. In the driveway stood a sleek silver convertible, its top down and ready for adventure. A picnic basket sat in the back seat, packed with sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of sparkling water. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying, and failing, to suppress her excitement. "To the lake," Daniel replied. "It's been too long since we've taken a day just for us." The drive was idyllic, winding roads flanked by blooming wildflowers and towering trees. When they arrived at the lake, they found a secluded spot under a canopy of willow branches, the water shimmering like glass in the sunlight. They spread out a blanket, unpacked their lunch, and spent hours talking, laughing, and simply enjoying each other's company. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of gold and lavender, Daniel pulled a small envelope from his pocket and handed it to Lila. Curious, she opened it to find 2 tickets to Italy, a dream destination they talked about visiting someday. "We've earned this," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Let's go explore the world together." Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged him tightly. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he murmured. "Always."